Hello, my name is Chris Hamilton, and I decided to do my project on solar fields. And not just solar fields in general, but solar fields specifically located in the southwest region of the United States. And I'd like to apologize in advance because I am recording in Atlanta, and this is the most quiet place that I could find, and it might get a little bit noisy at times, so for that I apologize. With that being said, we're going to move on to talk about solar fields and what they are. And the best way to understand that is to first define what a solar panel is. So a solar panel is a panel that contains photovoltaic cells, that take in the sun's photons, which are the rays that the sun emits every second and continuing on until essentially the end of its life, which is nowhere in the near future. But the unfortunate thing is that once the photons hit the Earth and provide us with the energy that we need for life processes, it's then deflected right back out into space again, and that energy is lost. So the idea of the solar panel is to essentially grab that lost energy and convert it into heat or electricity. And it's really one of the most simple kinds of green energy that we have right now. We're capable of it, but we don't use it as much. And to understand more now what a solar field is a vast amount of land that's broken up into parcels, and then essentially sold off to a private company, which would then turn this into a producing solar field. So placing these fields in the southwestern region of the United States is a fantastic place to have these because it has the most solar exposure anywhere in the United States. And we see that from the temperatures and the desert-like environment that exists in that region. That area also is not very lively. There's actually a very limited amount of resources in the area because it's so warm and because there's so much solar exposure that it makes it hard for life to exist out there. And that's why it makes areas like these good places to develop, because it has the smallest impact on any of the environments that we normally would exploit to get other resources. Now, this is just in its infancy, but this kind of technology actually is used, and I have personally seen it. So the picture that you are seeing right now is the solar field that exists in California right now. It's only been operational for a couple of years now. It's located right in the Mojave Desert, right on the border of California and Nevada. And when I was first going by, I didn't realize what it was until I looked a little bit closer, and I noticed that there is a bunch of solar panels surrounding this central tower, which was emitting a great deal of light, and I realized that it was a giant mirror, and that's just made to reflect the sunlight down onto the panels again to maximize the exposure in the area. And it's an ingenious. It's a great idea to maximize that energy that's coming down, to really harness everything that we're being bombarded with. And most of the world's solar power is generated through solar panels like this. So this particular unit produces enough energy to power 140,000 homes. And to put it in perspective of my audience, that is more homes than exist in the city of Manchester. So you could essentially have Manchester operating off the grid and then some. And that's fantastic when you really think about it, because that is a lot of energy. And now putting it in places like California, which have very, very dense populations, it really does help out with the energy consumption in these areas. And that's why I feel that having these places essentially developed for this kind of use it'd fare well for these cities. So you could see cities like Albuquerque, Phoenix, Los Angeles, Salt Lake City, even Denver as a possibility to be gaining energy from these units. And of course, mass producing these kinds of facilities is not necessarily the most ideal thing. You have to consider the environmental impact that is going into it. And although it seems that there's not necessarily that much life out in the desert, there absolutely are still animals and other organisms that we need to consider and that we need to make the smallest amount of disruption on. So we have common bats, red-tailed hawks, desert tortoise, the western diamondback rattlesnake, the coyote. And these are all animals that we're very familiar with. And it's definitely important that we try to minimize the amount of impact that we have on their lives. So, of course, there needs to be some type of monitoring that occurs within these areas before any further production begins. So if we can map out these areas and find out the areas that have the most sun exposure combined with the least amount of impact on these animals, it would be a perfect place to do this. And the diagram that I'm showing you now is produced by energy.gov, and it shows you the states that exist in the southwestern corridor. So you have the very western tip of Texas, you have New Mexico, all of Arizona. Both of those states are fully covered in this red, and it's showing you the maximum solar exposure, and it has the greatest solar energy potential. And then the other states, California, Nevada, Utah, and Colorado, also have very, very good potential for this kind of energy usage as well. And essentially placing these solar fields in areas where you have no people and the limited there's a lot of space in between these cities, and there's limited resources, obviously. If we place these very far away from cities and very far away from any types of gatherings of life, it actually could be very nice. And it's also, I know the solar field in California is right next to the highway, and many view it as a eyesore. If we place these far away from anybody to see, it would help out with not destroying the ecotourism. I know there is some action towards placing a solar field near Joshua Tree National Park, and it's been turned down, and it needs to continue to be turned down because we don't want to take down the Joshua trees. The Joshua trees are a very symbolic type of tree. They only are known to exist in two parts of the world, so near Jerusalem and then in the Mojave Desert. And something that rare definitely needs to be on the conservation board. We don't want to take out a species like that just for our own benefits. So there absolutely needs to be some sort of monitoring in that sense as well, so that we keep it away from there, no matter how much solar potential we would gain from having it in such an area like that. It is absolutely crucial that we keep it away from areas like that. And then to shift on now, there is a website that shows you how much that you could save in specific areas, and I chose my house in Utah, and I typed in my address, and you can do that for any address in the United States. You type it in and it'll tell you, and the estimation over a 20-year solar lease, you would be saving about $10,000 from that 20-year lease. And that just goes to show how much money you would be saving for the energy consumption. That's just in one household alone. And if you think about that on a big scale, like a grand scale, that's a lot of energy saving. And with all that being said, I think I've covered enough to make out my point of how I think that solar fields should definitely be the future of our energy sector. And I thank you for your time. Thank you so much for watching.